To expand upon the law of the indispensable servant, we must look deeply into the soul of the worker and the mechanic. It is not enough to simply show up. One must inhabit the very spirit of the enterprise. Here is the expansion of that first principle into 10 distinct lessons of character. 1. The myth of the employee. The first step toward true success is the total mental rejection of the word employee. You must banish the thought that you are working for someone else. In truth, you are a merchant of your own labor, and your employer is simply your first and most important customer. The man who thinks he is working for a boss will always do the bare minimum to avoid reproach. But the man who believes he is in business for himself, merely using his current position as his first counting room, will naturally strive for a perfection that no overseer could ever command. 2. The danger of the standard day. There is no more certain way to remain in the ranks of the mediocre than to keep one's eye fixed upon the clock. The man who drops his tools the very second the whistle blows, as if the work were a burden he is glad to be rid of, reveals that his heart is not in his craft. Success is drawn to the man who lingers just a moment longer, not for the extra pittance of overtime pay, but to ensure that his station is left in better order than he found it. This extra minute is the mark of a man destined to lead. 3. The art of anticipation. A machine can follow a command, but only a thinking man can anticipate one. To become indispensable, you must study your superior. Observe the problems that weigh upon his mind. If you see a letter that needs a reply or a shipment that is delayed, do not wait to be asked to intervene. Present him with the solution before he has even formulated the request. When a master finds a man who can think 2 steps ahead of the day's toil, he will hold on to that man as if he were gold, for in the world of business, such foresight is rarer than diamonds. 4. The dignity of the lowly task. Never be too big for any task that helps the firm. I started as a bobbin boy and later a messenger, and I performed those duties with as much pride as I later managed the steelworks. The man who sweeps a floor with such thoroughness that not a grain of dust remains is advertising his character to every passer-by. If you cannot be trusted to master the broom, why should you be trusted to master the ledger? By embracing the work that others find beneath them, you prove you have the humility required for true greatness. 5. Seeking the gaps in the machine. In every business there are gaps, tasks that fall between the responsibilities of different men, which are often neglected. The aspiring man looks for these gaps. He does not say, "That is not my department." He says, "That is a need of the firm, and I am the firm." By filling these voids, you weave yourself into the very fabric of the organization until the machinery cannot function smoothly without you. You become the vital oil in the gears of the enterprise. 6. The silence of substantial work. Do not be a man who talks of his ambitions. Be the man whose work shouts on his behalf. There is a quiet dignity in the man who performs his duties without seeking constant praise or pats on the back. The indispensable servant does not need to tell his master how hard he works. The results of his industry are visible in the ledger and the quality of the product. Trust that the eyes of those who can promote you are always watching, especially when you think they are not. 7. Adopting the owner's eye for waste. A partner does not watch the company's resources with indifference. He watches them with a vivid interest. To attract success, you must develop an eye for waste, waste of time, waste of material, and waste of motion. When you find a way to save the firm a single dollar, you have earned your place. The man who treats the company's coal, oil, or stationery with the same frugality he would his own is a man who understands the fundamental law of accumulation. 8. The courage to suggest. An indispensable man is not a yes man. He is a man who thinks. If you see a process that is clumsy or an expenditure that is unnecessary, bring it to the light. Do so with modesty and respect, but do so with the confidence of one who cares for the outcome. A master worth his salt does not want a shadow. He wants a mind that can offer a new perspective. By suggesting an improvement, you demonstrate that your brain is engaged in the business, not just your hands. 9. The transformation of responsibility. Most men flee from responsibility. The successful man pursues it. When a difficult or unpleasant task arises and the cry goes out, "Who will take this up?" be the first to raise your hand. Every new responsibility is a new opportunity to prove your mettle. Each burden you carry strengthens the muscles of your character. The person who becomes the beast of burden for the firm's most difficult problems soon becomes the person who holds the keys to the firm's future. 10. The arrival of the partner. By following these steps, a miraculous transformation occurs. One morning, you will realize that your employer no longer looks at you as a hand, but as a counselor. You will find your advice is sought, your judgment is trusted, and your presence is required at the table where the great decisions are made. You did not ask for this power. You attracted it by the sheer force of your usefulness. You have ceased to be a servant, and you have become, in all but name, a master of the empire of business.
Now, let's get into part 2, the virtue of frugality. The accumulation of capital is not a matter of luck, nor is it a matter of a high salary. It is a matter of discipline and the realization that every penny is a seed. Here is the expansion of the virtue of frugality into 10 essential laws of financial character. The first law of the surplus. The most important lesson a young man can learn is that he must always spend less than he earns. It matters not if your income is a few shillings a week or £1,000 a year. If you cannot maintain a surplus, you are a failure in the making. The surplus is the only true measure of your independence. Without it, you are a slave to the next day's bread. With it, you are a potential master of your own destiny. The mastery of the day of small things. The great fortunes of the world are not built from massive windfalls, but from the careful collection of trifles. Many despise the small things, the penny saved on a meal, the walk taken instead of the carriage. But the man who is careless with pennies will be reckless with pounds. Frugality is a habit of the mind that respects the labor represented by every coin. If you do not respect the penny, you do not respect the work that earned it. The rejection of appearances. One of the greatest obstacles to success is the desire to appear successful before one actually is. The young man who spends his first earnings on fine clothes or jewelry to impress his peers is advertising his own vanity and lack of judgment. It is a mark of a small mind to seek the shadow of wealth rather than the substance of it. Live in a style far below your means until your capital, not your labor, provides your comforts. Capital as stored-up labor. You must view money not as a means of consumption, but as stored-up labor. Every dollar you save is a servant waiting to work for you. When you spend that dollar on a whim, you are firing a servant who could have labored for you for the rest of your life. The man who understands frugality sees his savings as an army. The more he recruits, the more powerful his empire becomes. The danger of the sure thing. Frugality is not only about saving, it is about the protection of what has been saved. The man who has worked hard to save a small sum is often the easiest prey for the speculator, promising quick returns. True frugality requires the patience to avoid the get-rich-quick scheme. Your capital should only be placed where the principal is safe and the return is honest. A slow, steady growth is the only growth that builds a lasting foundation. VI. The discipline of the ledger. A man cannot be frugal if he does not know where his resources are fleeing. You must keep a rigid account of every expenditure. The act of writing down what you spend forces the mind to justify the cost. You will find that when you must record a foolish purchase, the shame of the ink prevents the repeat of the error. A businessman who does not know his costs is lost. A man who does not know his expenses is soon broke. VIII. Frugality as a test of character. Frugality is the primary test of a man's self-control. It is the ability to sacrifice a present fleeting whim for a future permanent good. The man who can say no to himself is a man who can eventually say no to the world. If you cannot master your own desires for comfort and ease, you will never possess the strength of character required to lead an industry or manage a great body of men. VIII. Avoiding the burden of debt. Debt is the ultimate enemy of the independent man. To borrow money for anything that does not produce more money is a form of financial suicide. The man who owes is a man who is owned. Frugality allows you to pay your way as you go, ensuring that you never have to bow your head to a creditor. Integrity and debt are rarely found in the same house for long. The pressure of the latter often breaks the former. IX. The purpose of the hoard. We do not practice frugality for the sake of the gold itself. A miser is as much a slave as a spendthrift. We save so that we may have the power to seize opportunity when it appears. When the market turns or a new invention arises, the man with ready capital is the man who becomes the leader. Frugality provides the ammunition for the battles of business. Without it, you are an unarmed man in a fortified world. X. The transition to the trustee. Finally, you must remember that the end of frugality is not personal luxury, but the ability to become a trustee for the community. You save in your youth so that you may give in your age. The habits of discipline you learn while saving your first $100 are the same habits that will allow you to wisely distribute millions for the public good. Frugality is the school where the great philanthropists of the future are trained. To rise above the ranks of the common laborer, one must seek to become a monopolist of skill. In the empire of business, the world does not pay for average effort. It pays for the rare, the refined, and the perfected. Here is the expansion of the monopoly of excellence into 10 laws of professional mastery. 1. The fallacy of the jack of all trades. The man who claims he can do anything usually does nothing well. In an age of increasing complexity, the generalist is a servant to the specialist. To attract success, you must narrow your gaze. You must choose a single department of human effort and resolve to occupy it so completely that your name becomes synonymous with that craft. It is better to be the master of the smallest bolt in the engine than to be a man who knows a little of the whole machine but can fix no part of it. 2. The law of the second mile. Most men are content to reach the standard of good enough. They do what is required to keep their positions and no more. The monopoly of excellence begins exactly where the requirements of the job end. It is the second mile, the extra polish on the steel, the extra hour of research, the extra care in the calculation that separates the master from the workman. Excellence is found in the margins that others are too lazy to explore. 3. The knowledge of the root. A man cannot master a trade if he only understands the surface of it. You must go to the roots. If you are in the steel business, you must understand the chemistry of the ore, the geography of the mines, and the physics of the furnace. If you are a clerk, you must understand the history of the goods you sell and the needs of the people who buy them. True mastery is built upon a foundation of fundamental principles, not just the imitation of others. 4. The obsession with detail. I have always maintained that perfection is made up of trifles, but perfection itself is no trifle. The master is he who has an agonizing regard for the smallest detail. A single flaw in a rail can derail a train. A single error in a ledger can ruin a firm. To become the authority in your field, you must develop a microscopic eye. When you become the man who never misses a detail, the world will eventually trust you with the largest of enterprises. 5. The library of the mind. A man's education should never end with his schooling. To maintain a monopoly of excellence, you must be a perpetual student of your industry. Use your evenings to read the technical journals, the histories of your predecessors, and the latest discoveries in your field. The man who spends his leisure time in the pursuit of professional knowledge is storing up a capital of the mind that no market crash can ever take away. 6. The rejection of imitation. It is not enough to do what has been done before. The master seeks the better way. You must look at the methods of your superiors not as finalities, but as starting points. Ask yourself, how can this be done more cheaply? How can it be done more safely? How can it be done more beautifully? Innovation is the child of mastery. You must know the rules perfectly so that you may know exactly how to break them for the benefit of the service. 7. The benchmarking of the self. The man who compares himself to his neighbor will only ever be as good as his neighbor. The master compares himself only to the highest possible standard of the craft. Set your own par for every task. If the best in the world can produce 10 units, aim for 11. If the highest quality is 99%, settle for nothing less than 100. By competing against perfection itself, you ensure that you will always remain ahead of your human competitors. 8. The concentration of energy. A river that spreads over a vast plain becomes a swamp. A river that is confined to a narrow channel becomes a power that can move mountains. You must concentrate your mental energy. Do not allow your thoughts to be scattered by the distractions of the day. When you are at your task, be wholly at your task. This intensity of focus creates a mental heat that melts away difficulties and allows you to see solutions that remain hidden from the distracted mind. 9. The patience of the craftsman. Excellence is a plant of slow growth. Many young men abandon their chosen field just as they are on the verge of mastery, lured away by the promise of a slightly higher wage elsewhere. This is a fatal error. To change trades is to reset your clock to 0. Stay at your post. Allow the interest on your skill to compound year after year. The man who stays in one furrow until he reaches the end of the field is the one who finds the treasure. 10. The authority of character. Finally, remember that skill without character is a house built on sand. To hold a true monopoly of excellence, your work must be as honest as your word. The world must know that your product is exactly what it claims to be, and your service is rendered with integrity. When your name becomes a brand that represents both supreme skill and unshivering honesty, you have reached the pinnacle. You no longer seek success. Success is your shadow.
Now we must discuss trust as the great multiplier. In the architecture of the great enterprise, there is a cement more durable than any mortar used in the construction of my mills. It is trust. Without it, the finest machinery is but a heap of rusted iron. With it, the smallest shop can command the resources of a nation. Here is the expansion of trust as the great multiplier into 10 laws of social capital. 1. The law of the open ledger.
A man who hides the truth usually has a truth worth hiding. To build trust, you must be a man of transparency. Whether you are dealing with your partners, your workmen, or your customers, let your dealings be as clear as a mountain stream. When men know that you have nothing to conceal, they cease to waste energy in suspicion and begin to invest energy in cooperation. An open ledger policy in your character creates a foundation upon which a skyscraper of credit can be built. 2. The sanctity of the oral contract. In my time, the greatest deals were often sealed not with a 100-page document, but with a look in the eye and a firm grasp of the hand. Your word must be a thing of granite. If you promise a shipment by Tuesday, it must arrive if you have to carry it yourself. Once the world learns that your yes is an unalterable fact, you will find that the friction of business disappears. You will move faster than your competitors because you do not have to wait for the lawyers to verify your intent. 3. The mirror of loyalty. If you wish to receive loyalty, you must be the first to give it. A master who treats his men as mere hands to be discarded at the first sign of a downturn will find himself abandoned when he needs them most. You must stand by your associates. When the market is dark, show them that you are the last to leave the sinking ship. This mutual bond creates a corporate soul that can withstand any panic. Loyalty is a mirror. It reflects exactly what you project into it. 4. The power of the fair exchange. The man who seeks to get something for nothing or to give less than he receives is a thief of his own reputation. Every transaction you engage in should leave the other party feeling they have gained. A good deal is not one where you have defeated a rival, but one where both sides have found a new advantage. By ensuring that those who deal with you consistently prosper, you turn every customer and partner into a voluntary agent of your success. 5. The selection of the unblemished associate. You are judged by the company you keep. In the empire of business, character is contagious. You must be ruthless in pruning from your circle anyone who lacks integrity, regardless of their brilliance. A genius who lies is more dangerous than a fool who is honest. By surrounding yourself only with men of high moral standing, you create a reservoir of trust that the public will instinctively recognize. The reputation of the group is the shield of every individual within it. 6. The courage to admit error. Nothing builds trust faster than a man who can look his fellows in the eye and say, "I was wrong." The attempt to cover a mistake is a second, greater mistake. When you stumble, own the fault immediately and make restitution twice over. This reveals a character that values truth more than vanity. Men will trust a man who is honest about his failings far more than a man who claims to be perfect, for they know the former is grounded in reality. 7. The multiplier of credit. Credit is the physical manifestation of trust. It is not merely a loan of money, it is a testament to your character. The man who has guarded his reputation for frugality and honesty will find that he can command the capital of others even when his own pockets are empty. Trust allows you to leverage the stored-up labor of the community. In this way, one man's vision can be magnified 1,000-fold by the confidence of his neighbors. 8. The rejection of slander. The man who speaks ill of his competitors to gain an advantage reveals his own weakness. To attract success, you must maintain a chivalry of business. Speak well of others, or speak not at all. When you show respect for your rivals, you demonstrate that you are a man of such confidence and integrity that you do not need to tear down another to build yourself up.
This attracts the respect of the public, who are weary of the petty bickering of small minds. 9. The consistent temperament. Trust is built upon predictability. A man who is a saint on Monday and a tyrant on Tuesday cannot be trusted, for no one knows which man will appear at the counting room. You must cultivate a steady, reliable temperament. Let your principles be the same in the heat of a strike as they are in the joy of a banquet. When your associates can predict your reaction to any crisis, they can act with confidence in your absence, multiplying the efficiency of the entire firm. 10. The legacy of the trustee. Finally, you must view your reputation as a public trust. As your success grows, you become a representative of your industry and your community. You must act in a way that reflects honor upon the very idea of the self-made man. By being a person of service, you prove that wealth and virtue are not enemies. True success is reached when the community is glad that you are wealthy, because they know your wealth is in the hands of a man they can trust.
To scatter one's fire is to ensure that no target is ever truly pierced. The sun's rays, though warm, will not ignite a flame until they are drawn through a lens into a single burning point. Here is the expansion of the law of concentration into 10 commandments of focused power. 1. The error of the side venture. The most dangerous temptation for the aspiring man is the promising side investment. You will be told that it is wise to diversify, but in the early years of building a career, diversification is the parent of failure. Every dollar and every thought you send into a field where you are not a master is a soldier sent to a battle he cannot win. If you are a steel man, be a steel man and nothing else. If you are a banker, be a banker. To split your attention is to invite the specialist in each field to defeat you in both. 2. The one basket principle. The popular proverb says, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket." I tell you this is a mistake that leads to mediocrity. Put all your eggs in one basket and then watch that basket. The man who has his fortune in one place will watch it with a vivid interest that the man with 10 baskets can never emulate. By concentrating your risk, you compel yourself to a level of vigilance and mastery that ensures the safety of the treasure. 3. The mastery of the vital few. In every business, there are 1,000 details, but only 3 or 4 that truly determine the outcome. Concentration is the art of identifying these vital few and ignoring the trivial many. You must possess the mental discipline to brush aside the thick brush of daily distractions to focus your gaze upon the roots of the enterprise. The man who masters the 3 most important facts of his trade is 10 times more powerful than the man who knows 1,000 irrelevant ones. 4. The rejection of the stock ticker. The stock market is a siren that lures men away from the steady work of production and into the rocky shoals of speculation. The man who watches the ticker is not watching his business, he is watching the whims of a crowd. To attract success, you must concentrate on the value you create, not the price the world sets upon it. If you build a superior mill, the profit will take care of itself. Do not allow the gambling spirit to fracture your focus. 5. The conservation of mental energy. The brain has but a limited supply of nervous force each day. If you spend that force worrying about a dozen different problems, you will have nothing left for the great task at hand. You must learn to shut the doors of the mind. When you leave the mill, focus on your health and your family. When you are at the mill, let nothing else exist. This rhythmic concentration allows the mind to recharge and strike with maximum force during the hours of labor. 6. The power of the staying post.
Success is often a matter of who can remain at their post the longest. Many men have the brilliance to start, but few have the concentration to finish. When the market turns and others flee to new industries, the man who stays, who focuses on perfecting his method during the lean years, is the one who finds himself without rivals when the sun returns. Persistence is simply concentration stretched over time. 7. Avoiding the jack-of-all-trades mindset. The man who prides himself on being able to turn his hand to anything is a man who will always be a subordinate. In the empire of business, we do not seek the man who can do many things passably. We seek the man who can do one thing superlatively. To concentrate is to admit your limitations in 1,000 areas so that you may be limitless in one. The world pays for the peak of the mountain, not the breadth of the plain. 8. The discipline of the singular aim. You must have a main prize in view at all times. Ask yourself every morning, does this action move me closer to the mastery of my chosen trade? If the answer is no, the action is a distraction. Concentration is as much about what you refuse to do as what you choose to do. Be ruthless with your time. A no said to a secondary opportunity is a yes said to your primary destiny. 9. The conservation of capital. Just as you must concentrate your mind, you must concentrate your capital. Do not be a small shareholder in dozen companies where you have no voice. It is better to own a large portion of a small, well-managed concern that you understand than a tiny sliver of a giant enterprise you do not. Your money should follow your expertise. When your capital and your character are working in the same narrow channel, they create a force that is irresistible. 10. The reward of the specialist. Finally, understand that the world reserves its greatest honors for the man who has made himself the absolute authority in a single field. When the public thinks of a bridge, they should think of you. When they think of a rail, they should think of you. This brand of the mind is the ultimate result of concentration. By being the one man who knows the most, you become the one man the world cannot do without.
In the empire of business, the man who uses only his hands is a laborer. The man who uses his hands and his head is a craftsman. But the man who uses his eyes to see what others overlook is a master. Knowledge is the only true basis of wealth, and knowledge begins with the eye. Here is the expansion of the habit of observation into 10 laws of the vivid interest. The law of the vivid interest. The difference between a man who succeeds and one who merely gets by is the quality of his attention. You must walk through the world with a vivid interest in every process you encounter. Do not merely look at a piece of machinery. Observe how the gears mesh, where the oil flows, and where the friction occurs. The man who is truly alive to his surroundings is constantly gathering the raw materials of improvement. To observe is to possess. The search for the hidden why. Most men accept the world as it is. The observer asks why it is so. Why is the furnace shaped this way? Why does the messenger take this route? Why is this ledger organized in such a fashion? Behind every established custom is a reason, and often that reason is no longer valid. By asking why, you uncover the inefficiencies that others have accepted as permanent. The man who understands the why of a business will soon be the one who directs the how. The detection of waste. Success is often found in the salvage of what others throw away. In my mills, we observed the smoke from the chimneys and the slag from the pits, not as refuse, but as lost profit. You must train your eyes to see waste, waste of motion, waste of heat, waste of time. The man who observes that a workman takes 3 steps where one would do and finds a way to rectify it has increased the wealth of the world. The study of the best. To become a master, you must observe the masters. Whenever you see a man who is exceptionally successful in his trade, study him with the intensity of a scientist. Observe his habits, his manner of speech, and his method of organization. Do not merely envy him, dissect him. Take the best of what you see and graft it onto your own character. Observation is the shortcut that allows you to benefit from the experience of every man you meet. The microscopic ledger. In the counting room, observation must be mathematical. You must observe the fractions of a cent. Many a firm has gone into bankruptcy while its owners were looking only at the big numbers. You must be a man of the microscope. Observe the small leaks. They are the ones that sink the great ships. A man who knows exactly what every pound of coal and every hour of labor produces is a man who can never be surprised by failure. The observation of human character. The most complex machine you will ever encounter is the human being. You must learn to observe the tells of character. Observe how a man treats his subordinates when he thinks no one is watching. Observe his sobriety, his punctuality, and his eye for detail. By observing the small actions of men, you can predict their large actions. This allows you to choose your associates with the certainty of a man who sees through walls. The law of comparison. Observation is of little use if it is not comparative. You must observe your own work alongside the best work of your competitors. Do not shield your eyes from the excellence of others. Look at it squarely. If their steel is purer or their service faster, observe exactly why. Use the success of others as a yardstick to measure your own progress. The man who refuses to look at his own deficiencies is a man who has closed the door on his own growth. The reading of the silent signs. In the marketplace, there are silent signs that predict the coming storm or the coming boom. Observe the inventories of your neighbors, the spirit of the workmen in the streets, and the talk of the merchants. The man who observes these subtle shifts in the moral weather of business can reef his sails before the gale hits or spread them wide just as the breeze begins to blow. The transformation of the mundane. The habit of observation turns the most mundane task into a school of philosophy. Even the sweeping of a floor offers lessons in efficiency and order if one is looking for them. By treating every moment as an opportunity to learn, you ensure that your mind is never idle. The indispensable servant is simply a man who has observed what needs to be done and does it before he is asked. Finally, you must realize that everything you observe is a deposit in the bank of your experience. The man who observes widely and deeply in his youth will find that in his middle age he possesses a reserve fund of wisdom that allows him to make decisions with lightning speed. You do not need to seek flashes of genius if you have a lifetime of careful observations to draw upon. The eye is the servant of the brain, and a well-served brain is a master of the world.
In the construction of a great enterprise, the most precious material is not the iron ore, nor the coke, nor even the capital in the bank. It is the man stuff. A leader's primary task is to be a judge of human potential, to find the coming man and bind him to the cause. Here is the expansion of the courage to invest in manhood into 10 laws of human leadership. 1. The discovery of the coming man. You must not look for men who have already arrived. They are often set in their ways and expensive to maintain. Instead, look for the coming man, the young man who possesses a vivid interest and a restless desire to improve. I have always preferred to promote from within my own ranks.
The boy who starts as a messenger and shows a keen eye for the business is a far better investment than the high-priced stranger. When you find a spark of ambition, fan it into a flame. 2. The 3 pillars of selection. When evaluating a man for responsibility, look for 3 qualities above all others: sobriety, frugality, and integrity. A man who cannot manage his own appetites will never manage a department. I would rather have a man of moderate ability who is sober and honest than a genius who is a gambler or a drinker. Talent is common, character is rare. The man who is steady is the one who will be standing when the crisis comes. 3. The partner, not the hireling. The secret of my success was not my own brilliance, but the fact that I surrounded myself with men much cleverer than myself. To keep such men, you must treat them as partners, not as hired hands. Give a man a stake in the hedge. When a man feels that the success of the firm is his own success, he will labor with a devotion that no salary can buy. I made millionaires of my associates because I knew that their wealth was the best guarantee of my own. 4. The delegation of authority. The man who tries to do everything himself will never build anything great. You must have the courage to trust your men with real power. Once you have selected a man and tested his character, give him a department and let him rule it. If he fails, replace him, but as long as he is there, let him be the master of his task. A leader's job is to provide the spirit of the work. The men must provide the execution. 5. The law of public praise. A man will work for money, but he will die for recognition. When a workman or a manager performs a feat of excellence, let it be known. Do not be stingy with your appreciation. A word of sincere praise from a superior is a moral tonic that strengthens the heart for the next struggle. By celebrating the successes of your men, you create a culture where every man strives to be the next one mentioned in the dispatches of the firm. 6. The testing fire of responsibility. You do not know the mettle of a man until you have placed a heavy burden upon his shoulders. To develop leaders, you must give them tasks that are just beyond their current reach. Watch how a man reacts when he is given a difficult problem with no instructions. Does he come to you for a solution, or does he find one himself? The man who finds a way is the man you must promote. 7. The rejection of favored sons. In the empire of business, there is no room for nepotism. To promote a man because of his birth or his connections rather than his merit is a crime against the organization. It discourages the hard-working and poisons the spirit of the firm. Every man must know that the path to the top is open to him, regardless of his origin, if only he possesses the character and the skill to climb it. 9. The sympathy of the master. A leader must remain in touch with the man at the machine. You cannot lead men if you do not understand their lives, their struggles, and their aspirations. I have always found that a visit to the works, not as a boss, but as a fellow worker, does more for the spirit of the men than a dozen circulars from the head office. When the men know that the master knows their toil, they feel a bond of manhood that transcends the ledger. 9. Pruning the dead wood. Just as you must encourage the growing branch, you must be courageous enough to prune the dead wood. A man who has lost his vivid interest or who has become careless in his character is a parasite on the organization. It is no kindness to keep a man in a position for which he is no longer fit. To do so is to do an injustice to the men below him who are ready and eager to rise. 10. The legacy of the Carnegie boys.
The ultimate proof of a leader is not what he builds, but whom he leaves behind. My greatest pride was not the steel I produced, but the Carnegie boys, the men I trained who went on to lead great industries of their own. Your success is measured by the number of men you have helped to reach their own potential. By investing in manhood, you ensure that your work will continue long after your own hands have left the plow.
In the realm of finance, there are two paths, the path of the builder and the path of the gambler. One creates, the other consumes. To attract success, you must stand firmly upon the rock of industry and turn your back forever on the shifting sands of the quick return. Here is the expansion of the rejection of speculation into 10 laws of financial integrity. 1. The definition of the parasite. You must understand the moral difference between the businessman and the speculator. The businessman creates a rail, a loaf of bread, or a ton of steel. He adds to the wealth of the world. The speculator merely bets on the price of what another man has produced. He is a parasite who seeks to reap where he has not sown. To be a successful speculator is a greater misfortune than to fail, for it seduces a man into believing he can live without being useful. 2. The poison of the ticker. I have known many brilliant young men who were ruined the moment they put a ticker in their office. The constant fluctuation of prices distracts the mind from the steady improvement of the product. If you spend your morning watching the price of your shares, you are not watching the quality of your service. A man cannot serve two masters. He will either serve his trade with a vivid interest, or he will serve the gambling spirit. 3. The myth of the inside tip. The inside tip is the bait on the hook of ruin. If a man comes to you with a secret that will make you rich overnight, ask yourself why he is sharing it with you instead of keeping the fortune for himself. In 99 cases out of 100, the tip is either a delusion or a snare. Success is not found in secrets. It is found in the open laws of industry, frugality, and mastery. 4. The sanctity of working capital. The capital of your business is its lifeblood. To risk it in speculation is a crime against your associates and your workmen. I never allowed $1 of the firm's money to be used in the stock market. Your capital belongs in your one basket, the trade you understand. To take the surplus earned by the sweat of your men and gamble it on the whims of Wall Street is a betrayal of the trust placed in you as a leader. 5. The false allure of margins. Buying on margin, using borrowed money to gamble on stocks, is the shortest road to the poorhouse. It is a system designed to strip a man of his reason and his shirt. Frugality teaches you to pay as you go. The man who buys only what he can afford is a free man. The man who buys on margin is a slave to the lender and the market's mood. 6. The distinction between price and value. The speculator knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. To attract lasting success, you must concentrate on value. If you make the best product at the lowest cost, the world will eventually pay you what it is worth. The price on the exchange may go up or down, but the value of a well-managed mill is an enduring fact. Trust in value, ignore the price. 7. The sure thing as a mirage. There is no such thing as a sure thing outside of your own hard work. Whenever you hear those words, tighten your grip on your pocketbook. The only certainty in speculation is that the house eventually wins and the gambler eventually loses. The only sure path to wealth is the slow, steady accumulation of a surplus through the rendering of indispensable service. 8. The moral decay of the gambler. Speculation does more than empty the pocket. It rots the character. It creates a fever in the blood that makes honest work seem dull and slow. The man who has made $1,000 in an hour of gambling will find it difficult to return to the patient labor of the workshop. Once a man loses his respect for the day of small things and the dignity of labor, his career is effectively over. 9. The fortress of the one trade. Your protection against the gambling spirit is your own expertise. When you are the absolute master of your trade, you know that your success depends on your own efforts, not on the luck of the draw. This provides a peace of mind that the speculator can never know. While he lies awake worrying about the opening bell, the focused businessman sleeps soundly, knowing his basket is well watched. 10. The goal of substantial wealth. We seek wealth so that we may be masters of our own time and trustees for the public. Speculation rarely produces the kind of wealth that can be used for the good of humanity, for it is wealth without a soul. Only the money earned through honest industry carries with it the wisdom to spend it well. Aim to be a builder of monuments, not a winner of bets.
The accumulation of millions is not the end of a man's journey. It is merely the midpoint. To have attracted success is a great feat, but to use that success for the elevation of the race is the only true triumph of democracy. Here is the expansion of the duty of the surplus into 10 laws of the gospel of wealth. 1. The definition of the trustee. When a man's wealth exceeds his own modest needs and those of his family, he is no longer merely a rich man. He has become a trustee for the community. This surplus is not his to squander on vanity. It is a sacred fund placed in his hands because he has proven himself more capable of administering it than the state or the public at large. To accept the wealth is to accept the yoke of this responsibility. 2. The error of hereditary wealth. I can imagine no greater curse for a young man than to be born with a silver spoon in his mouth. To leave great fortunes to children is to rob them of the very struggle that produces character. It often leads to a life of idleness and fashionable dissipation. The duty of the parent is to provide the best education and a fair start, but to leave the burden of the surplus to the community, not to the heir. 3. The rejection of almsgiving. The greatest obstacle to the progress of the race is indiscriminate charity. To give a shilling to a beggar who has not earned it is to encourage the very poverty you seek to cure. Almsgiving provides a temporary comfort while poisoning the spirit of self-reliance. True wealth must be used to help those who will help themselves, to provide the ladders upon which the aspiring can climb, rather than the crutches that keep them stationary. 4. The creation of opportunity. The surplus should be directed toward the creation of institutions that foster the man stuff of the future. I chose libraries because a library is a temple of knowledge that yields nothing to the idle, but everything to the diligent. Whether it be a park, a concert hall, a laboratory, or a school, the aim of the trustee must be to give the community the tools to improve its own condition. We do not give the fish, we build the pond. 5. The administration during life. A man who waits until he is on his deathbed to dispose of his wealth is a man who is only giving because he can no longer hold on to it. There is no grace in a testament. The true trustee administers his surplus while he is yet alive, using his own business judgment to ensure that every dollar achieves the maximum good. If you have the brain to gather the wealth, you have the duty to direct its return. 6. The simplification of private life. To be a proper trustee, a man must set an example of modest, unostentatious living. To build a palace while your neighbors live in hovels is to invite the very class hatred that destroys a nation. The rich man should shun all display and luxury, living in a manner that shows he considers his wealth as a tool for service, not a badge of superiority. A man's character should be his only ornament. 7.
the law of the public good. In every expenditure of the surplus, the question must be, does this benefit the community as a whole? Individual relief is the task of the neighbor. The administration of great wealth is the task of the statesman. We must look for the strategic points, the universities and the technical schools, where a single investment can produce 1,000 leaders for the next generation. 8. The prevention of dependency. The highest form of giving is that which makes the recipient independent of the giver. If your charity makes a man more dependent upon you, you have failed him. The trustee looks for projects that stimulate the vivid interest and the industry of the people. We must foster the spirit of the self-made man in every corner of society. 9. The condemnation of the hoarder. The man who dies leaving behind many millions of available wealth, which was his to administer during life, will pass away unwept, unhonored, and unsung. He has failed in his primary duty to his fellow man. To amass a fortune is a skill. To distribute it wisely is an art. The man who fails in the latter proves that he was never truly worthy of the former. 10. The final verdict. Die disgraced. I have said it before, and I shall say it until the end. The man who dies thus rich dies disgraced. He has lived as a sponge rather than a fountain. But the man who uses his success to provide for the public good achieves a form of immortality. He becomes a permanent part of the progress of the race, and his life remains a light upon the hill for all who follow.
Great wealth is a heavy burden that can easily crush the soul of the man who carries it. If you allow your mind to shrink while your bank account expands, you have not succeeded. You have merely been bought by your own possessions. To remain the master of your fate, you must cultivate the inner life with as much industry as you did your outer trade. Here is the expansion of the mastery of spirit into 10 final laws of the elevated life. 1. The preservation of the student's mind. The moment a man thinks he is graduated from the school of life, he begins to decay. You must remain a student until your final breath. Read not just for profit, but for the expansion of your sympathies. A man who knows only his business knows very little. Seek to understand history, philosophy, and the great poets. They provide the moral compass that the ledger cannot. 2. The cultivation of high companionship. In your youth, you sought associates who could help you build. In your maturity, you must seek companions who can help you think. Surround yourself with men of high ideals, artists and thinkers who care nothing for your wealth but everything for your character. To sit at a table where money talk is forbidden is a luxury greater than any feast. 3. The rule of the simple hearth. The more complex your business becomes, the more simple your private life should be. A man's home should be a refuge of peace, not a museum of vanity. When you surround yourself with unnecessary servants and gilded furniture, you create a thick wall between yourself and the common humanity that is the source of all true wisdom. 4. The mastery of temperament. A man of success must be a man of sunshine. To go through life with a sour face and a cynical heart is to admit defeat. Cultivate a cheerful, hopeful temperament. I have always found that the happy worker is the most efficient, and the happy master is the most enduring. Do not allow the cares of the world to rob you of your capacity for joy. 5. The duty of physical health. A diseased body will eventually produce a diseased mind. You cannot administer a great trust if you have neglected the machinery of your own frame. Practice temperance in food and drink. Seek the outdoors, walk the hills, and breathe the salt air. A man who burns the candle at both ends will not have enough light to find his way to a meaningful old age. 6. The keeping of the common touch. Never forget that you were once a weaver's son or a bobbin boy. To lose the common touch is to lose the ability to lead.
Speak to the man at the gate with the same respect you show the man at the head of the board. By maintaining your sympathy for the toiling masses from which you sprang, you keep your spirit grounded in the reality of human life. 7. The intellectual second trade. Every man should have a hobby that he treats with the seriousness of a trade. Whether it be the study of music, the collecting of books, or the improvement of a park, you must have a field of interest where money is not the goal. This second trade prevents the mind from becoming one track and provides a reservoir of interest when the days of active business are over. 8. The rejection of resentment. As you rise, you will encounter the small-minded who will envy your success and misinterpret your motives. You must be large enough to ignore them. To carry resentment is to carry a bag of stones that slows your progress. Forgive the critic and the slanderer. They are often merely the victims of their own lack of vision. Keep your eyes on the main prize of a useful life. 9. The practice of daily reflection. Take time each day to sit in silence and audit your soul. Ask yourself, have I been honest today? Have I been kind? Have I used my power for the good of another, or merely for my own vanity? This daily accounting is more important than the bank's balance sheet. It ensures that you remain the master of your character rather than a passenger in your own life. 10. The final piece, usefulness. The ultimate mastery of spirit is the realization that you are but a passing guest in this world. Your mills will eventually crumble, and your gold will pass to others. The only thing that remains is the influence you have exerted for the good of your fellow man. To know that you have been used for a high purpose, that you have been a worker together with the universe, is the only peace that passeth understanding.